Tokyo Ghoul by Sui Ishida. For the past 2 months, I've been completely engrossed in this manga, with the question pending, how good is it really? Like most of us in the anime manga community know, the anime is viewed as one of the worst adaptations ever, and the source material being significantly superior. My own personal experience with the anime was lackluster to say the least, so I was open to reading it for that reason. Now, the major plot beats in the anime are recognizable, they're there, but the overall story, the feeling is just significantly compressed and altered and just not very mature. It feels very much like shonen and trying to be edgy. But I feel like what Tokyo Ghoul truly is a mature adult psychological journey. For those of you who don't know, Tokyo Ghoul is a modern fantasy taking place in Tokyo, where flesh-eating humanoids called ghouls exist among humans, and they are viewed as monsters. The story follows Kaneki, our main character, who is a young introverted man that gets preyed upon by a female ghoul. And when all hope seems lost, when he's about to die, a freak accident occurs, killing her and saving him. He wakes up days later at the hospital with an organ transplant, and now he is a ghoul. So because of this, he's thrust into the ghoul world, forcing himself to view ghouls as they truly are, which, yes, most of them, if not all of them, are murderers, but they're not so different from humans. They have children, friends, hopes and dreams. Due to the people he meets, he is forced to see they didn't choose to be born this way, just as he did not choose to be changed into a ghoul. So he develops a lot of empathy for them. And as the story progresses, the world gets bigger and he learns just how complex this world really is. And the story, in an allegorical sense, explores racism, labeling people as other, political conspiracies, and eventually fascism. Now, all that is good, but to me, what makes Tokyo Ghoul truly great are the psychological journeys. So let's get into character journeys. For me, this story, though dark and horrific sometimes, I would say is quite hopeful and inspiring, because at its core, to me, the story is about identity and, more specifically, trauma and inner darkness. The entire cast of characters are in service of that central theme. Some characters are in different phases, some are in the same phase together, and it's just exploring darkness, confronting it, integrating with it, suppressing it, avoiding it, giving into it, and letting it define you. Now, of course, Kaneki, our main character, is the most in-depth version of this exploration. His journey goes through many psychological and physical transformations that reflect all the different phases that he goes through. And I think that's so realistic, because when people are going through darkness, when people are going through new experiences in life, they tend to change physically and psychologically, of course. And his story is, like I said, the most in-depth version of that journey. But there's also other characters. And in the beginning, there's Touka, his eventual love interest. And her character is extremely interesting and extremely necessary for Kaneki's story, because she is a ghoul. She has been a ghoul her whole life. Her world, her friends, her family, all ghouls. And she hates herself. She hates being a ghoul. She doesn't hate ghouls. Like I said, she has friends and family who are ghouls, but she hates what she is, and she views herself as a monster. Unlike most ghouls, she has tried desperately to integrate with humanity. She goes to school, she's pursuing a degree, she has human friends. She even practices a form of self-harm by eating human food, because in this world, human food, aside from coffee, which is kind of cool, human food is extremely harming and repulsive to ghouls. And even when no one's watching, in her own private life, she forces herself to eat human food. That's how much she rejects and hates who and what she is. Kaneki can relate to her, but seeing it in someone he cares about kind of changes his own perspective of himself. And I just love what Touka does for him in the beginning of the story, and what she represents for the larger thematic purpose of dealing with trauma and dealing with your inner darkness. And then in the second series, Tokyo Ghoul Re, there's two characters who stand out the most to me. Now, a lot of characters get introduced in this story, and they're all pretty much great, to be honest. But to me, Mutsuki and Urie stand out the most and really drive home this overall theme. So in Mutsuki's character, she's quite an interesting character, and I've never seen someone quite like her. She's a biological female who presents herself as a man due to severe abuse she endured as a child by a man. Though she is very much like Kaneki. She's been through so much, and she's incredibly kind and meek and introverted on the surface, but she has incredible darkness within her. As an adult, just like Kaneki, she goes through another form of abuse and torture. And this completely breaks her mind. This completely fractures her. And unlike Kaneki, she doesn't have a positive story after this. Unfortunately, she embraces this. She continues to suppress her darkness even further, and she lets her own darkness, her own pain, her own avoidance define her. And eventually it leads to collapse. And though it is a sad story, I do think it's a cathartic and necessary story for her, and I really enjoyed her story. Though she was quite annoying towards the end because of her darkness, not because she was poorly written. And then there's Urie, who is the inverse of Mutsuki, in the sense that I hated him in the beginning. He is annoying because he's incredibly selfish. That's literally all he is. He's a selfish guy, just cares about revenge, just cares about getting stronger, just cares about climbing the ranks as a ghoul investigator to eventually achieve revenge. So of course, a character like that, you're just kind of like, man, shut up. Like, open your eyes, be nice to people. Come on, like, you're so unpleasant to be around. But then he experiences severe loss, and this kind of alters his personality a little bit. He begins to have more empathy and more care for people around him, for the people in his squad. And from then on, I really started to like him. The reason why I like his character so much is because though he does go further down the path of darkness and he begins to embrace it more due to his path for revenge, he's also opening up more and he's gaining more tools. And due to the people around him, he successfully comes out of this. And eventually he takes accountability. He confronts his traumatic childhood. He confronts his loss. And I think he views himself with wisdom because he begins to take accountability, as I said, but like also showing himself grace. Should I hold on to this? Should I have remorse? Should I have self-hatred for certain things that happened? And he is like, no, I shouldn't. That was out of my control. I do not need to hold on to this so much. And I love that. And even though he is a side character, he has a full arc. And I think his arc also really supports this overall theme, like I've said. Now, that brings me to the actual main story, the actual main theme. The more, in my opinion, the more superficial takeaway from this story, which is the view of humans and ghouls and the pursuit of coexistence. Now, there is a reoccurring quote, there's a reoccurring thought in characters' minds that this world is wrong. This world does not make sense. I mean, in this world, there's humans and ghouls. Ghouls literally need to kill humans to survive. So it's like, how can we view them empathetically when they are monsters? And them, it's like, we didn't choose this. So yeah, this world is unfair. This world is wrong. And Kaneki and Eamon, he doesn't fully support the point of this video, so I'm not going to talk too much about him, but I do love him as a character, and he represents a whole other aspect of the story, which is the overall political ideologies and the sociological ideologies of humans and ghouls coexisting and how to view them, and he has a great character journey as well. But him and Kaneki, they're both in pursuit of an alternative answer, like how can we integrate, how can we somehow figure this out? And this story does have a happy ending. And I don't mind that it's a happy ending. It's just how we got there. I do feel like it wasn't the most nuanced. I don't think there's too much to be taken away. It's just a little bit convenient. Whatever. Like I said, to me, this story is special because of other reasons, not because of this aspect of the story. And at the end, Kaneki finally resolves in an inner monologue that this world is not wrong. It just simply is. Now, I started to think about that perspective and apply it to our own real world. And I reject that. I reject that outlook on the world and on society. But I found myself applying this to identity, to darkness. Instead of this world is wrong, you could liken it to self-hatred. You could liken it to rejecting yourself and trying to be something else. Trying to change yourself in the wrong way through avoidance. I'm broken. I'm fractured. I shouldn't have. I wish I wasn't born. I wish I wasn't like this. I'm wrong. And I feel like instead of doing that, you need to confront your darkness, confront who you are, and accept who you are. Show yourself grace and accepting what is. And only then can you truly evolve and truly grow. And I feel like that's like the overall message to me, my interpretation of Tokyo Ghoul. Tokyo Ghoul doesn't suggest that what destroys people is darkness itself. It's avoiding it and refusing to face it. And I just highly recommend for people to read this manga. Don't watch the anime. The anime, you'll get a very superficial perspective of everything I've just said. And I think reading this story, it has beautiful art, some of the best manga art I've ever seen. But granted, I haven't read a ton of manga, but I have read comic books. And yeah, it's visually very striking, very beautiful art. And I just think it's incredibly profound and incredibly thought-provoking. It reminded me a lot of Mr. Robot, actually, which is a great show. And in a purely aesthetic way, and just, I don't know, I did a lot of research to find answers, and I didn't find any answers, but I saw so much connections to Batman, to Batman comics, and just, but more, not the character Batman, just Gotham, that world. There's the Kijima character kind of looks a little bit, reminds me of the Penguin, and there's a lot of stuff with clowns, and more specifically Nimura, his character, who is basically the Joker, more specifically Heath Ledger's Joker. And I just was thinking a lot about the Dark Knight and just other aspects of Batman comics, and it was really cool. I think this world just has a really cool dark gothic, more specifically an emo vibe, as well as very profound storytelling. And I would just highly recommend this to everyone. You don't need to be into manga, you don't need to be into anime. It's a very adult story, and I just think that if you're into storytelling, if you're into this sort of thing, you need to read it, truly. So let me know your thoughts on my thoughts on Tokyo Ghoul, the anime, the manga. And for those of you who are well versed in manga, what's a story that you think is truly meaningful that you think I should read? Not Berserk, because I mean, Berserk is shoved in everyone's faces, so I'm aware of Berserk, and I'll probably get there eventually. Thanks for watching.